We cut our deficits by more than half, partly by making sure the wealthiest just paid their fair share. That's all. That's all. And by the time I left office, wages were rising, the uninsured rate was growing. Handed it off, I said, here. That's what we did with a progressive agenda. Now, we didn't get everything that we wanted to get done. We couldn't reverse 40 years of economic trends in only 8 years. So we didn't reverse all the growing inequality that had taken place or all the jobs that had gone overseas. We had more work to do, especially once Republicans took over Congress and blocked everything we did. But they said, no, give us a chance. We know what to do. So what have they done? They've now been in control of Washington for 2 years. What have they done with that power? It's not true. They have done something. They cut taxes for the rich, just like the last time. They stripped out rules to protect our air and our water, just like the last time. Ran up the deficits, just like the last time. And they know this stuff is not popular. So they try to scare you with all kinds of boogeymen. Try to scare you with divisive issues that they can make up. They'll try to disenfranchise people and take away their right to vote. Stacey's opponent has already been caught multiple times. Don't boo. Vote. Vote. They can't hear you boo. They don't care about your boos, but they care about your vote. Now, I just want everybody to think about this, because I'm definitely using my voice. If you are aspiring to the highest office in the state, in which you pledge to look out for the people of your state, then how can you actively try to prevent the citizens of your state from exercising their most basic right? There's a quote. I got to find the quote here. Because I looked at the quote and I said, really? He said that? He said, he's concerned about Stacey trying to get people to vote on Tuesday. And I'm quoting here, especially if everybody uses and exercises their right to vote. He thinks that's a problem. Look. Here's one thing I gotta say. I challenge anybody. There are all these people out in the press. So I want to challenge them anytime that I or any other Democratic executive actively said we didn't want somebody to vote. But we get taken for granted that that's okay. Georgia, it was here at Morehouse where Dr. King realized nobody was afraid if we have God on our side. That realized he had to fight. And nonviolent fight for justice and equality. Here, he received an education that helped forge the intellect, the soul force, the discipline, the compassion that would transform America, and taught others to be unafraid. So Georgia, be unafraid. If their efforts to take away your right to vote makes you mad, there's only one way to make it right. Don't boo. Vote. 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 So that's in Georgia. Now, meanwhile, back in Washington, let's take a look at what they've been doing these last 2 years. They promised to take on corruption. They've racked up enough indictments to field a football team. They pledged to fight for the little guy. Then they doled out $1.5 trillion, not billion, trillions, dollars in tax cuts aimed at billionaires and corporations. Didn't even pretend to pay for it. When I was president, and we were, hold on. And we were fighting to dig the economy out of the hole that we had inherited. And we're trying to put people back to work, rebuilding our roads and making sure teachers weren't laid off, and trying to get health care passed. Every time Republicans said, we can't do that, we can't help ordinary folks, we can't afford it, it'll increase our deficits, that's terrible, can't do it. But when they wanted $1.5 trillion in tax cuts for folks who didn't need it, all of a sudden, that just don't matter. Now that they got the tax cuts passed, just 2 weeks ago, the Republican leader in Congress says, I'm very concerned about the deficits. I'm not making this up. Please feel free to do a fact check because I believe in fact-based campaigning. Look it up. He went on to suggest, well, obviously to bring them down, we're going to have to cut programs like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. That's what he said. Cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security to pay for billionaires' tax cuts does not sound like fighting for the little guy to me. You know who will fight for the little guy? Stacey Abrams will fight for a living wage for Georgia workers, for good public schools for our kids, for better transportation in rural and low-income communities. Republicans, they keep trying to diminish Stacey's remarkable accomplishments. She is the most experienced, most qualified candidate in this race.
Oh my God.
She's got an incredible track record of fighting for working families. I mean, I know that, sometimes, for some reason, women do all the work and men try to take the credit. Come on. You know I'm right. Let's talk about health care for a second. 8 years ago, the Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act. The law helped cover 581,000 folks just right here in Georgia. The law also made it illegal for the first time for insurers to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. It also, by the way, and I want all the women who are listening, on TV, wherever you are, on the internet, it used to be insurance companies could charge you more just for being a woman. It's just like going to the dry cleaners. You know, where like I put in my shirt and they'll charge you one, and then you put in your blouse, they're gonna charge you twice as much. So we said, no, you can't do that. Democrats made that happen. And Georgia, not a single, I want everybody to be quiet because I want you to hear this. Not a single Republican voted for it. Not one. Zero. Nada. Zilch. Goose egg. None. Not one. So they then proceed for the next 8 years. They're obsessed. We're going to sabotage Obamacare. We're going to repeal Obamacare. And obviously, if they keep control of Congress, you know they're going to try it again because that's what they do. Except, something interesting happened, Stacey. Suddenly, even the folks who didn't like Obamacare, they kind of liked not being discriminated against because of a pre-existing condition. Some of the folks who didn't like or vote for me suddenly said, you know, I kind of like having health care. So now it's election season. And suddenly, magically, Republicans are out there running ads saying we are going to protect you if you've got a pre-existing condition. So, I mean, they voted dozens of times to try to get rid of these protections for pre-existing conditions. Last year, they fell just one vote short. And if they win on Tuesday, you know they're going to go after it and they'll succeed next time. If they keep control of Congress, you better believe they're coming after your health care again. But a Democratic Congress would not let that happen, and that's why you got to vote for Democrats like Carolyn Bourdeaux and Lucy McBath. So, not only that, if you vote, you can actually make sure more people get covered here in Georgia. One survey shows that the majority of Georgians of every age, every gender, every race want the next governor to expand Medicaid. Even a majority of Republicans. Stacey's opponent says he won't do it. Stacey has promised and will do it. She will expand Medicaid coverage. So if you vote for her and you vote for Democratic state legislators to help her, your vote could cover nearly 500,000 Georgians, just like that. Democrats aren't going to let Republicans go after your pre-existing conditions, protections, or gut your Medicare to pay for their tax cuts. They'll protect your care, and you know it because they've done it. Now, but I want to make a larger point, Georgia. If Republicans thought their tax cuts for billionaires was popular, that's what they'd campaign on, but suddenly you don't hear a peep about that. If they thought all their votes to take away your health care coverage were popular, that's what they campaign on. You don't hear a peep about that. But it's worse than that. Not only will they not own up to what they have done, suddenly they are saying that they're the ones to protect people with pre-existing conditions. I want everybody to pay attention to this. They have literally been doing the opposite of what they're now saying. It's like calling up, down. Calling black, white. It requires some kind of gumption, some kind of nerve, some kind of chutzpah. We can also call it what it is. It's a lie. And this is more important than any particular issue. If you want one thing out of your lease, there's got to be some core integrity. I mean, Stacey was raised with core values like honesty and honoring your commitments and keeping your word. Which reminds me, I saw her opponent backed out of that debate. So he can go to a rally and say, well, he can't do both. What's he afraid of? He's afraid of Stacey, I guess. But, you know, I had a chance to meet Stacey's parents backstage. Two rebels. I mean, Stacey couldn't get away with nothing. Got two preachers as your parents. So you know she was raised right. And right there. Reverend and Reverend. Reverend Doctor. So this brings me to the bigger question of this election. What kind of politics do we want? Now listen, I was saying to some folks last couple of days. Throughout human history, and certainly throughout American history, we've had politicians that kind of fudged on the truth. They made promises that turned out to be harder than expected. They pumped up all the good things they did and didn't talk about the things that they screwed up. They tried to put a positive spin on things. That's human nature, by the way. It's not just politicians. All y'all do it a little bit. Right? You know, I was joking out, you know, Michelle come home and, hey, honey, I'm doing the dishes. And right away, she's looking like, first of all, you haven't done the dishes in like a year. So I'm not impressed. Second of all, why are you doing the dishes? You must have done something wrong. I was trying to put a positive spin on things. So some of that's human nature. All right, we get it. What we have not seen, at least in my lifetime, is an approach in which folks in the highest levels of office, folks who we thought our children should be looking up to, will just blatantly, repeatedly, boldly, shamelessly lie, just make stuff up. Just say things that they know are not true. And they just keep on doing it. And it'd be one thing if it was the first time, but They do this every election. And part of what they do is the mistruths they tell are specifically geared to terrify folks. And what's interesting is after the election, they don't talk about it no more. I guess it just gets fixed. You never hear about it again. Remember in 2010, they said that Obamacare was setting up death panels to kill your grandma. Now, no, I mean, I gotta admit, at the time, I didn't know where to start. What do you mean? 2014, they said Ebola's coming to get us. Right after the election, suddenly they didn't talk about Ebola no more. 2016, Hillary's emails. This is terrible. This is like violating American national security. You know they didn't really believe it, because if they did, they'd be concerned about our current president on his cell phone while the Chinese are listening in, and he's leaving the phone in his golf cart. I didn't even have a phone for 8 years. When I finally got out and I had this phone, I said, Sasha, how do I work this? Didn't know what to do. Now in 2018, suddenly they are telling you that the biggest threat to America, the biggest threat is some impoverished refugees 1,000 miles away, on foot, got their babies with them, broke, got no money. This is And you know what? That's not enough just to lie about it. Now, they're sending our brave troops, who, by the way, by law cannot enforce laws on domestic soil. They're sending them down there for a political stunt when they could be with their families. The men and women of our military deserve better than that. That's not patriotism. So they try these scare tactics, but here's the thing, Georgia. What I worry about is sometimes we fall for this stuff. It's like, some of you too young, I guess maybe they still show Charlie Brown's Christmas. Y'all remember? Love that show. Da-da-da-da-da-da. So, you know how Lucy's got the football? And she says, come on, Charlie, kick it. He says, no, you're going to pull the weight. No, not this time. And then finally he goes and she pulls it. He's flat on his back. Sometimes I feel like we're like Charlie Brown. We just fall for the okie doke. Georgia, don't fall for the okie doke this time. Don't be bamboozled this time. Don't be hoodwinked. Because while they are trying to distract you with all this stuff, they're robbing you blind. They'll say, look over there. Then they'll give their tax cuts to their billionaire friends. Look. And then they'll let big polluters poison our air and our water. They will take your health care away while you're not looking. They are like one of those cons where a door-to-door salesman comes to your door, says he's going to sell you a security system, and meanwhile his buddy's in the back stealing your stuff. But more than the practical effect, when words stop meaning anything, when people can just make stuff up, and there's no consequences. Democracy can't work. George Orwell, Morehouse Men, pick up that book. Because, Spellman, because we've seen before what happens when there is no consequence to lying and words stop meaning anything. And truth no longer matters. Not only can democracy not function, societies can't function. Marriages can't function. Friendships can't function. Businesses can't function if, when you say something, it doesn't mean anything. That is the moment that we were in our country right now. And the only check on that kind of behavior is you. The only guardian of truth is you. You and your vote. On Tuesday, you can vote for a politics that's decent, for a politics that's honest, for a politics that is lawful, for a politics that tries to do right by people. And for those who are watching who aren't Democrats, let me just say there's some issues that should transcend party. Expecting your elected officials not to just make stuff up. That's not a Democratic or Republican issue. It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say that we don't try to monkey around with the rules of our democracy. That we don't threaten the freedom of the press just because they write something about us we don't like. It should not be a matter of partisan politics to say we don't target certain groups of people based on what they look like, or how they pray, or who they love. Anybody who's watching, if you are truly a fiscal conservative, then you can't think it's fiscally responsible to run a $1 trillion deficit. If you are following the precepts of the good book, you can't think there's anything proper about ripping immigrant children from their mothers' bosoms at the border. And by the way, if you believe in the American Constitution, you gotta know that no one person can decide who is an American citizen and who's not. I want people to think about that. This is America. We're not supposed to be thinking that way. We shouldn't even be close to thinking that way. It's bad enough spending 8 years trying to take away people's health care, and then in the final days trying to act like Mother Teresa. It's bad enough spending all your time vilifying people and questioning their patriotism and calling them enemies of the people and then saying, I'm very concerned about civility. Or some folks who say, yes, I'm very concerned about this behavior, but don't do anything about the bad behavior. We need more leaders who will stand up for what's right regardless of party loyalty. Leaders who will fight for you and for what's best in the American spirit. Patriots who will actually stand up for anyone whose fundamental rights are being threatened. I want a leader who stands up for other people's health care even if they've got health care. I want a leader who will stand up for other kids being bullied even if their kids are okay. I want a leader who will stand up for somebody else's right to worship as they please, even if I disagree with how they worship. Because this is America. This isn't some half-baked, backwater. This is America. Land of the free, home of the brave. And that's what all of us need to stand up for with clarity and with patriotism and with purpose. Those core values that bind us to our fellow citizens, no matter who we are. Because that's what Americans are supposed to do. That's what America's supposed to be. And that's what Stacey Abrams believes.
Thank you for not breaking. Shit, you did break.
Fuck!
That's what Stacey believes. That's what her parents taught her. To look out for each other. To be honest. To show compassion. To work hard. To act right. To be kind. To treat people based on the content of their character. To look out for the weak and the vulnerable, not to bully them or to kick them when they're down. Isn't that what we want for our children? The choices we make right now live on. The violence of the past still ripples through. Misinformation, all the noise, and remember who we are and who we are called to be. I'm hopeful because out of this moment of political darkness, I see a great awakening of citizenship all across the country and all across the great state of Georgia. I'm traveling around, I'm seeing so many people get involved for the first time, or for the first time in a very long time. Marching and organizing and registering. Some of them running for office themselves. By the way, record numbers of women. You know we need more women in office. Young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. I've heard about the domestic workers right here in Georgia, mobilizing for Stacey like never before. Folks earn their living cleaning other people's homes, taking care of other people's kids. If they're not too tired to vote, you better not be, because they got a harder job than you do. They're like so many Americans who maybe didn't have an interest in politics until stuff happened. And now they're saying this time is different. This moment is too important to sit out. The antidote to government by a powerful few is government by the organized, energized many. And let me say this, and I want all the young people who are listening, because I was reading some articles about some young people saying, well, I'm woke, but I'm not sure I'm going to vote. They say, well, I'm not sure that it really makes a difference. I would rather hashtag. Let me tell you something, and I am telling you the truth. One election won't fix everything. No, it won't. I mean, with Stacey as governor, it's not as if suddenly racism and sexism vanish. It's not as if suddenly we don't still have a problem in our criminal justice system. It doesn't mean suddenly all poverty is cured. But you know what it does mean? It means things will start getting better. And that's how change happens. We do the work, we get it started, and it gets better. And then we do more work, and it gets a little better. So if you don't like what's going on right now, don't complain, don't get anxious, don't throw up your hands in despair, don't boo, don't hashtag, vote. When you vote for Attorney General and state reps, you have the power to protect voting rights and make sure the criminal justice system treats everybody fairly. When you vote, you've got the power to strengthen laws that protect women from harassment in the workplace and make sure that they're paid the same amount of money for doing the same work as a man. When you vote, you have the power to make it just a little bit easier for a student to afford college. And maybe a little bit harder for a disturbed person to shoot up places where our kids learn and where our seniors pray. When you vote, you have the power to make sure a family has health insurance. You could save somebody's life. It might not be everybody, but that one person who had health care because of your vote, that power rests in your hands. If you get involved and knock on some doors and talk with your friends, you get some souls to the polls on Tuesday, you sign up with Stacey's volunteers, you vote up and down this whole incredible Georgia Democratic ticket. If you do that, something powerful will happen. Change will happen. Hope starts blossoming. With each new step we take in the direction of fairness and justice and equality and opportunity, hope starts to spread. That's what John Lewis taught us. Make history here in Georgia. Make things better here in Georgia. Get to work here in Georgia. Let's go vote. God bless you. God bless you, Atlanta. God bless you, Georgia. God bless you, these United States of America.